we take a holistic approach. Normally, we want to see, again, that healthy, balanced ecosystem, native plants and animals. We like to use what's called adaptive management, so we can change as we see things changing in the park. We can change our plants. They're not set in stone, so they often will change as things change for us. The more native biodiversity, the better. We always try to say that. Now, biodiversity, what is biodiversity? You hear that word a lot. And it refers to all the varieties of life on Earth. At all levels, you can have it all the way at the huge ecosystem levels, all the way down to the genetics of maybe a bird or a particular fish like the brook trout. That's biodiversity. Why do we want to care? Why should we care about biodiversity here at the park? Anyone in particular really should really care about biodiversity. It's a measure of health. Really, it's about clean air and water, wildlife, vital ecological services. It's healthy our way of life, beautiful areas we have, and preserving native species. So what's the number one cause of biodiversity loss? Anyone know this? We have some environmental people that are up on some of this stuff. Of course, it's unfortunately habitat destruction. Paving, and look at some of these. I gave a talk last week about restoring meadows to a group of folks, and we talked about that, but why? And I tried to get people to cut down on all the lawn mowing that they do. And some of it I use a little bit of this in the talk as well, but look at that, some astounding numbers there on how much pavement we have in the United States. How much is left for wildlife? Not much. I mean, we humans have modified 95 to 97% of all land in the United States. Therefore, I mean, parks are critical. We're really important. We protect and manage wildlife habitat for the future. I take that really seriously. What are we doing? Of course we are. We're protecting land. We have these beautiful forests here in Geauga County, beautiful wetlands in northeast Ohio, very well known for our high-quality wetlands here. Beautiful ledges and caves. This is out at one of our new parks, Weldon's Gorge. It's a beautiful spot, very unique. Nice meadows, like I talked about with folks last week on how to plant meadows in the park and manage them for pollinators. But it's not enough just to protect land. You really do. We need to actively manage that land. You can't just let it sit around. I mean, it's good to have that protected, of course, but we need to manage it as well to ensure that integrity. And how do we prioritize management here? Basically, first thing you have to do is we have to know what we have. We quickly go over and do biological inventories and surveys on land. We've got to know what our mission, the goal of the Park District is. And protecting our special places first is kind of the way we go about it. We have some very high quality, some of the best in the whole state of Ohio. Here in Geauga County, some of the most unique places, and those are the places we really manage first. Again, balance is what we're after. Do we have the collective will to ensure the existence of unique species? What makes us Geauga Park District? I like that idea. What's unique about us? We have some very unique things. That brook trout I talked about a couple of months ago, that's one of them, and I've got some interesting news about that here toward the end of the talk. I do these biological surveys. I get into this every year. I usually try to do one on a new piece of property we have or an older up-and-coming park that we're planning on. I go out and study it for about a year with folks. And then I write a management plan on it. And this kind of helps guide the proper development of the park in protecting rare places, rare species, and even just everyday kind of common species as well. Oftentimes with that, we'll do some of these species-specific monitoring. We'll do rare, endangered species surveying. We'll do something called BioBlitz, and these are all one-hour talks in and of themselves. But I just wanted to touch on some of this. And of course, the rare species stuff. What makes Geauga County unique? And that's kind of the stuff that I like to concentrate on. I'll tell you one thing, is there's a beautiful little wetland. It's a rare place just south of Bass Lake on Bean Road area in Munson. And this is one of the last locations of this rare orchid Smaller yellow lady slipper, Cypripedium parviflorum. One of the last places in the whole state of Ohio you can find that little plant. Beautiful. It's only one other population and it's down to a couple plants. But I'm working with folks at the Whole Arboretum and a couple other places, and we're going to try to reproduce that thing and get some population up again. Unfortunately, this is the way they have to survive, right? They're caged. We have to cage these beautiful orchids, and you know why? Or I'm sure you guys know why. Deer. Unfortunately, they are deer love to browse on some of these orchids. So that brings me to wildlife management. Now, wildlife management here at the Park District is, we started it, John started it back in 2005-06 conversations, but really in 2006 we adopted a wildlife management policy with the Park Board, its commissioners. And again, we really strive, all of it falls under the Ohio Division of Wildlife Authority. That's really kind of, where we rest, hang our hat on that. And we follow all rules and regulations according to the Ohio Division of Wildlife, and I work closely with those folks. Again, in-house here, the goal is sustaining healthy wildlife, balanced native populations. Some of the concepts, just general concepts for us, hunting and trapping here at the Park District, why we do these things. Just like invasive plant problems, prescribed fire we use, other natural resource management techniques, we sometimes need to replicate nature where the natural processes have been changed or lost. In the case of deer, there were predators that kept deer in populations in check here. Okay, those predators are for the most part all gone now. And deer populations grew to unnaturally large numbers. I'm sure most of you know. I mean, deer were actually wiped out of Ohio. They were gone from Ohio in the early 20th century. For about 20 years, they were gone. There were no deer. But they have come back to very high numbers again in the state of Ohio. And the impacts of these animals are pretty dramatic. They're kind of what we call a keystone species. Biologists call them a keystone species, meaning that they can influence lots of other plants and animals, and they have the ability to change some of the ecosystem as well. So they do. They can do all these things. And many of you, I'm sure, have known or have dealt with some of these issues. Deer on the roads are no fun when they're running across the road this time of year. They do damage landscapes and crops, and they can do a lot of things, reducing biodiversity of plants and animals. They eat a lot of vegetation. We've done studies here in the park years ago. We put up deer exclosures, fenced in areas 30 by 30, and you can see inside versus outside of these deer exclosures. This one's at the Rookery a number of years ago, and we're probably going to redo some of these and revisit them this coming spring.
So those are intended to show.
So what we've set up in here long ago were points, and we count and do vegetation surveys, 5 within the fence, and then there's another control outside the fence. That's this area here.
I wondered what those.
And so inside versus outside, and then we look at their stakes, and then we look at the plants. We tally all the plants in that area and the species and count them, so we can tell changes in those. Now, an organization in the region that's really prominent and has been around for about 20 years now is the Lake Erie Allegheny Partnership, and we belong to this organization. We were one of the founding members, and we meet every few months, but it's a large group of all the park districts, many of the conservation organizations, the Ohio Division of Wildlife, the Nature Conservancy, the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. We're all involved in this organization. But we knew that deer were an issue. One of the things we did, we had a conflict committee around deer developed, and we developed a positions, basically a paper, a statement about our collective thoughts on deer problems. And we ratified it in 2013, and all these members here supported the statement on deer. And we notice we're here. And basically it says that natural communities need to be actively managed and conserved based on scientific principles. High deer populations cause damage to our ecosystems, and it's necessary for humans to intervene. with deer management. And so that, we started actually even before that, we were pretty proactive here about hunting, and we did start a hunting program in 2006 and 2007. And the goal again was having a balanced plant and animal community, and our tools in the toolbox are using archers and firearms, archery and firearms. Why hunting? This is interesting. You'll like this one here. So way back when, we were talking to lots of folks in the neighborhood around here, and Tom Stanley talked to us and wrote a letter to us. And I'd like to read this real quick.